Have you ever walked into a room and felt like you didn't belong? Like everyone else carried something you didn't? Confidence, status, success, maybe even perfection. And in that moment, you shrink, not because you're less, but because you believe you are. But what if I told you that every great person you've ever admired once stood in that same shadow? What if I told you that the only difference between you and the person you think is better is belief? I remember a young man who used to walk with his head down, not because he was humble, but because he was afraid. He was intelligent, talented, full of ideas, but when it came time to speak, he whispered. When it came time to act, he hesitated. When people praised others, he nodded in agreement and looked away, never seeing himself in the same light, until one day someone asked him, "Why are you hiding from the very thing you were born to become?" That question didn't just shake him, it woke something up. It wasn't about arrogance. It wasn't about pretending. It was about stepping into a mindset that says, I belong here. I am not less than anyone, and I will carry myself like it. You see, the world doesn't give you permission to be great. You must claim it. There's a quiet power in acting as if you are the best, not because others are worse, but because you finally decided to honor the greatness inside you. When you walk like someone with a destination. When you speak like someone with something to say. When you enter a room, let your presence introduce you before your words ever do. Because if you don't believe in your own worth, why should anyone else? Now, here's the truth. Nobody has more value than you. They may have more experience, more resources, more recognition, but no one has more you. And the moment you act like you know that, the game changes. Not for them, for you. He sat in the back of the classroom every day, quiet, unnoticed. Not because he didn't know the answers, but because he didn't believe he was allowed to speak them. His hands stayed under the desk, his shoulders slouched, and every time his name was called, his voice cracked. Not from fear of the question, but from fear of being seen. Everyone around him assumed he lacked confidence, but what he didn't know, was that confidence was never something you're born with. It's not a magical trait some people wake up with. It's a choice, a decision, and it's one he hadn't made yet. Most people spend their lives waiting to feel confident before they act confident. They think confidence will arrive like a letter in the mail one day with a seal that says, "You're ready now," but it never does. Confidence isn't given, it's activated. The most powerful people you've ever admired didn't start with confidence. They started with a decision. They stood in front of mirrors, trembling on the inside, but still chose to walk out the door like they owned the moment. They weren't better. They weren't more special. They were just bold enough to act as if they belonged. And that one decision changed how the world responded to them. Confidence isn't a condition you wait for. It's not tied to your income, your title, your looks, or your past. It's a mental contract you sign with yourself that says, I am enough. And I'm going to carry myself like it. And yes, your voice may shake. Your hands may sweat. But the moment you walk into a room believing that no one is better than you, not in ego, but in truth, you shift the energy around you. People start to look at you differently, not because they see something new, but because you finally do. Think about this. How many times have you held back because you didn't feel confident yet? How many opportunities did you pass up waiting for that perfect moment when you'd magically be fearless? And how many of those moments never came? Confidence is a decision you make before you feel ready. And when you choose it, even in the smallest way, everything begins to align. Your posture changes. Your tone sharpens. Your walk becomes a little more deliberate. You stop apologizing for your presence. You stop explaining your worth. You stop shrinking to fit spaces that were never meant to contain you. We've all been that person in the back row. We've all silenced ourselves at some point, thinking, maybe I'm not there yet. But the truth is, confidence starts the moment you decide to stop waiting for it. The moment you stop outsourcing your power to how you feel and instead act like the best version of yourself is already here. No one hands you confidence, you choose it. You wake up every morning, look in the mirror and say, let's go. I've got what it takes. Even if your heart is still catching up, you act like you do. And slowly that act becomes your reality. There's something strange that happens when you finally start walking like you belong. You begin to believe it. And belief, once planted, grows faster than fear ever could. But here's the truth most people never realize. The world will mirror back to you the image you project. If you walk into every room like you're unsure of yourself, people will treat you like you're unsure. And in yourself, that if you carry yourself like you have something to offer, they'll lean in, curious, attentive, drawn to whatever it is you believe you are. That's why you must see yourself as worthy before the world does. No one will line up to validate your greatness if you haven't already accepted it. The world is not in the business of giving you value. It reflects back the value you claim. And far too often, people are walking around asking for permission to matter, hoping someone somewhere will say, yes, you're enough. Yes, you're good enough to try. Yes, you're allowed to be bold. But what if that permission never comes? What if the world is just waiting for you to go first? That's the turning point. You become unstoppable when you stop waiting to be noticed and start deciding to be seen. Not by others, but by you. You don't need a stage to be significant. You don't need applause to validate your voice. You need to look in the mirror and recognize the raw, untapped potential staring back at you, and then choose to honor it. It's not about pretending. It's about remembering that everything you need to become who you are meant to be is already inside you. The clarity, the courage, the creativity, it's all there. But it only wakes up when you do. And that starts when you stop seeing yourself through the lens of doubt and start seeing yourself through the lens of identity. Let me ask you something. How many compliments have you rejected because deep down you didn't believe you deserved them? How many times have you questioned your success thinking it was a fluke or that someone else deserved it more? That's not humility. That's self-doubt disguised as modesty. And it keeps too many brilliant people living quiet, hidden lives. But what happens when you finally decide to believe the truth about yourself? You stop chasing validation and start owning your presence. You stop over-explaining your decisions and start standing firm in your choices. You stop comparing your timeline to someone else's highlight reel because you finally realize no one is better than you. They just started seeing their worth before you saw yours. It always starts there. The decision to believe you have value before anyone claps for you, before the promotion, before the platform, before the praise. Because when you believe it first, the world has no choice but to catch up. If you've ever looked at someone and thought, they're just better than me, then you've already handed away the key to your own power. Not because they're actually better, but because you believed it. Somewhere along the way, you started thinking greatness only belonged to certain people. That maybe confidence was inherited, that success was a privilege you missed out on. But the truth is far simpler and far more powerful. No one is better than you. They're just different in expression. That's it. Different in background, different in timing, different in the way they carry their voice, use their strengths, or navigate their pain. But better? No. That's a myth we've bought into for far too long. See, the world has done a brilliant job of putting people on pedestals. We celebrate them, applaud them, quote them, and somewhere in that noise we forget that they are human. We forget that behind that spotlight is someone who's battled insecurity, wrestled with doubt, and faced the same questions you do. The only difference? They chose to rise in their version of greatness. They didn't wait for permission to show up. And that's what you have to do. You don't need to become someone else. You don't need to sound like them, walk like them, dress like them, or talk like them. Because the moment you try to become them, you abandon what makes you powerful. And trust me, there's nothing more exhausting than being a second-rate version of someone else. Your uniqueness isn't a weakness. It's your leverage. It's your advantage. And when you stop trying to measure up to someone else's highlight reel, you finally get to build your own masterpiece. That's when real power begins, not in imitation, but in expression. But here's the part most people don't talk about. It takes courage to believe that your version of greatness is enough, that your voice matters, that your style, your energy, your rhythm, even your flaws carry value. It takes strength to show up as yourself in a world that's constantly trying to make you feel like you're not quite there yet. But once you do, something incredible happens. People start paying attention, not to the mask, but to the real you. And that's the version they'll respect most. Ask yourself this: who told you that someone else was better? Who defined the standard you've been chasing? And more importantly, why did you agree? That's where the shift happens, when you stop chasing someone else's definition of better and start defining your own. Because better is a moving target, and if you spend your life chasing it in others, you'll never discover it in yourself. You were never meant to copy greatness. You were meant to release it. And that begins when you realize that comparison is a distraction, not a direction. You weren't created to outdo anyone. You were built to express something no one else can. And until you own that, you'll always feel like you're behind someone, even when you're running your own race. So from this moment forward, carry this truth: no one is better than you. Different? Sure. But not more worthy, not more valuable, not more meant for success. You're not behind. You're just getting started. It's one thing to believe you're worthy, but it's another to act like it. Because knowing is internal, acting is intentional. And the truth is, many people know deep down they're capable of more, but they're still playing small, still hesitating, still second-guessing every move. Why? Because they haven't yet aligned their behavior with their potential. So, acting like the best isn't about arrogance. It's about accuracy. It's about finally deciding to carry yourself in a way that reflects the truth of who you are, not the fear of who you're not. Because potential doesn't manifest by accident. It responds to posture. It responds to decision. It responds to action. When you act like the best, you're not pretending. You're performing from a place of internal agreement. You're not waiting to earn confidence. You're living like it's already been issued. And that changes everything. Look closely at the people you admire. They walk with clarity. They speak with conviction. They move with direction. They don't pause every 5 minutes to ask the room for permission. They decided long before the world validated them that they were worthy of being heard, seen, respected. And because of that decision, their actions followed, their behaviors aligned, their energy matched their identity. And you know what? You can do the same. The mistake most people make is thinking their behavior must wait for their emotions to catch up. But it's actually the other way around. You act like you believe, and belief grows stronger in the process. You show up with your shoulders back, your voice steady, your focus clear, not because you have all the answers, but because you're no longer hiding from the questions. So ask yourself, what does the best version of me look like? How does that version speak, walk, prepare, lead? And then start doing it. Now, not someday, not when you feel ready, not when everything's perfect, but right now. Because the longer you wait to align your behavior with your potential, the longer you delay the results that were already meant for you. Acting like the best isn't about outshining others. It's about becoming fully yourself. It's about stepping into that meeting, that interview, that moment with the mindset that says, I belong here. I've worked for this. I'm built for this. And even if your hands shake and your voice cracks, you still show up with intention. Because that's what greatness requires. Not perfection, but presence. There's power in how you carry yourself. People can sense it. Your energy introduces you before you speak, and when you walk into a room like you have value, the room adjusts, not because you're louder, not because you're more experienced, but because you're anchored in a truth you've decided to live by. You don't have to be the most talented, you don't have to be the most qualified, but you do have to act like you've got something to bring to the table, because when you do, that table becomes yours to command, and in that space where belief meets behavior, everything begins to change. It's not enough to believe. It's not enough to act. At some point, you have to own it. Own the fact that you're not here to play small. Own the fact that your voice matters. Own the fact that you were built with something inside you that demands expression, not silence. And that kind of ownership doesn't come from external applause. It comes from internal agreement. Greatness doesn't respond to hesitation, it responds to identity. You'll never rise above the level of how you see yourself. That's the truth. Not how talented you are, not how hard you work, not how much potential you carry. If your identity is wrapped in doubt, you will sabotage your own breakthrough. You'll downplay your strengths, you'll shrink in rooms you were meant to stand tall in. You'll apologize for the very thing that makes you powerful. Because identity sets the thermostat. Everything else, your habits, your language, your expectations, adjust to match it. That's why you can't afford to walk through life wearing the mask of insecurity, not because the world won't accept you, but because you won't accept you, and until you do, you'll keep showing up like a stranger in your own skin. Think about it. How many times have you walked away from something thinking, I could have done better if I had just believed in myself a little more? That hesitation wasn't about your talent, it was about identity. You didn't see yourself as the one who could own the moment, so you gave it away. But greatness doesn't come knocking on your door, introducing itself with a smile. It doesn't ask, are you ready now? It shows up and waits to see if you are. And the only way to respond is with clarity about who you are, not who you hope to be, not who you pretend to be, but who you've decided to be. So, who is that? That's the question. Silence. It doesn't retreat when challenged. It just is. That's the power of identity. It anchors you when everything else feels unstable. It holds you steady when the spotlight is off. And most importantly, it silences the voice that keeps asking, am I good enough? Because now the answer is clear. Yes, I am. And the moment you start showing up from that place, not arrogance, but alignment, you no longer need to compete. You no longer feel behind. You no longer second guess your presence. You just show up. And let the weight of your identity speak for itself. So now, the question isn't, can you be great? The question is, will you decide to be? Because everything you need is already within you. The strength, the clarity, the courage. It's been there all along, waiting not for permission, but for your yes. Waiting for the moment you stop playing small, waiting for the day you stop comparing and start commanding, waiting for you to stand up, not just in the world, but in yourself. You don't have to wait to be crowned by someone else. Crown yourself. Act like the best. Walk like you belong. Speak like your words matter. Because they do, you do. There's no one coming to tell you it's your time. You tell yourself. You decide that today is a day you stop dimming your light for the comfort of others. That today is a day you walk into every room, every opportunity, every challenge like you were born for it, because you were. So rise, move, step forward, not with fear, but with fire. The kind of fire that comes from knowing you don't need to become someone else to be powerful. You just need to become fully you. Now go own your moment. Be bold, be relentless, and never again question whether you're enough. You are. Good luck, and thank you.